What happens when the most respected director in Hollywood turns his gaze on someone the entire world thinks it knows and proceeds to shred their image in front of everyone? Imagine the glittering lights, the cameras flashing, the hum of anticipation, and then one sentence, spoken casually but with surgical precision, slicing through a career like a scalpel. That sentence didn't just shock the room, it reverberated across the globe. And at the center of this storm, Meghan Markle, usually poised, always composed, suddenly found herself exposed, vulnerable, and unprepared for the avalanche that was about to follow. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was the 2025 Gotham Film Awards, one of Hollywood's most glamorous nights. Every red carpet was meticulously planned. Every smile was rehearsed. Every step on the crimson carpet was a calculated dance of image, perception, and power. Celebrities arrived in waves, the cameras capturing their every detail. The shimmer of a gown, the subtle nod to a director, the carefully measured laugh. Yet, even amid the glitz, there was an undercurrent of tension, the kind that makes even seasoned actors swallow hard. People had been whispering about tonight for weeks. Guillermo del Toro, the legendary director known for films that blend beauty, darkness, and absolute honesty, was set to speak. Now, Guillermo del Toro is not a man known for mincing words. He has an uncanny ability to see past the surface and call out what others can only murmur behind closed doors. He has built a career on creativity, integrity, and, occasionally, brutal honesty that leaves people stunned. And tonight, everyone knew he would not be holding back. Not at the Gotham Film Awards. Not when the world was watching. And the tension in the room suggested that his target was not a new actor, not an unknown producer. It was Meghan Markle. Why Meghan? Why now? After all, she is a global figure, admired and criticized in equal measure. Hollywood has long had a love-hate relationship with her. On one hand, she has charm, charisma, and the kind of international recognition most actors dream of. On the other, whispers of ambition, controversy, and perceived entitlement have followed her since the very beginning. Rumors of strained relationships with co-stars, conflicts with directors, and the occasional misstep in her career have been carefully cataloged by both the media and those within the industry. And Guillermo del Toro? He is not someone who allows unchallenged reputations to persist when he believes there's truth to confront. The moment the audience realized he was speaking about her, a hush fell over the room. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, a slight tightening of shoulders, a flicker of surprise across eyes. But soon it became palpable. Cameras adjusted, microphones leaned in, and every celebrity in the room felt the subtle weight of expectation. This wasn't just an award show speech. This was an event that would ripple across social media, entertainment news, tabloids, and gossip forums. And it would not be forgotten. Meghan entered the Gotham Awards with her usual composure, a smile that masked any hint of nerves. Her attire was impeccable, chosen not just to dazzle, but to command presence. Yet, behind her polished exterior, there was a tension that even the most experienced PR agents could sense. Every glance from Guillermo del Toro seemed to carry weight. Every murmured word backstage hinted at anticipation. For months, rumors had circulated that the director had reservations about her approach to Hollywood, her choices, and perhaps even her authenticity in a world where perception is everything. And then, the speech began. From the very first sentence, Guillermo set a tone that was equal parts admiration and criticism. The audience, trained to recognize subtle cues, stiffened as he spoke. His words were carefully chosen, each syllable loaded with intent. What made it worse? What made the entire situation edge on explosive was the calmness in his delivery. There was no scream, no dramatics, no overt aggression. Yet every word struck with precision, a surgeon's blade cutting through reputation, charm, and public persona. The content of his critique, the focus of his scrutiny, was not trivial. It was not about a wardrobe choice, a film role, or a minor faux pas. It was about credibility, authenticity, and presence in Hollywood. Guillermo did not merely question Meghan's talents. He questioned her standing, her intentions, and her understanding of the industry that had embraced some and rejected others for far less. The audience felt the tension coalesce into something tangible, something almost suffocating. People leaned in, waited, some even holding their breath, as each sentence seemed to land heavier than the last. Social media had not yet exploded, but the whispers were already there, spreading backstage and in the audience. What would this mean for her? Could she recover from a critique delivered not in private, but in front of the world's eyes, with cameras, reporters, and millions of online viewers ready to analyze every frame? Hollywood is a place where perception often matters more than reality, and tonight, perception was under attack. But what made the situation even more volatile was the contrast between Meghan's poised exterior and the intensity of the director's words. To an outsider, she seemed calm, professional, unaffected. To those paying attention, subtle shifts in posture, micro-expressions, and the slight tightening of her jaw revealed a storm behind her composed facade. Every celebrity knows how quickly public opinion can swing, how a single comment from someone like Guillermo del Toro can change career trajectories overnight. And tonight, it was happening in real time. There is a broader question here for all of us. What does it mean to be publicly scrutinized by someone whose words carry authority and influence? Hollywood, like many elite circles, operates on the currency of respect and reputation. When someone with the influence and legacy of Guillermo speaks, it is not a mere opinion. It is a potential turning point. And for Meghan, this moment was nothing short of critical. The stakes were clear: career, credibility, and public perception were all hanging by a thread. One misstep, one subtle misinterpretation, one viral clip could redefine everything. And in Hollywood, where fame is fleeting and judgment is instantaneous, the impact is magnified exponentially. By the end of the evening, whispers would turn into headlines, headlines into viral clips, and viral clips into relentless online debates. The repercussions could follow Meghan for years to come, or potentially end her Hollywood journey entirely. As Guillermo continued speaking, subtle reactions emerged from the audience. Some nodded in agreement, recognizing the harsh truths he presented. Others shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to laugh, applaud, or look away. Meghan's team exchanged glances, aware that control of the narrative was slipping through their fingers with every word. In the background, reporters hurried to record, lenses zoomed in for close-ups, and every second was already becoming a moment to dissect, analyze, and share. And yet, despite all the tension, there was a peculiar calm in the chaos. Guillermo del Toro's delivery, precise and measured, carried an almost hypnotic authority. He wasn't merely criticizing. He was telling a story, a narrative that highlighted ambition, missteps, and the consequences of navigating Hollywood's complex social ecosystem. Every line was a lesson, every pause a strategic pivot, and every pointed remark a spotlight on the vulnerability of those who think charm and fame alone can sustain a career. By now, you might be wondering, what exactly did Guillermo say? How could a speech, given with such professionalism and tact, become so incendiary? How did Meghan, often seen as confident and composed, find herself in a situation that could irreversibly damage her career? The answers lie in details few outside the industry would notice. Tiny expressions, subtle wording, and an undercurrent of truth that many insiders have long discussed but never publicly acknowledged. And here's the most shocking part. This wasn't a simple critique. It was a strategic dismantling, a careful unweaving of a public persona that had been cultivated over years. Guillermo del Toro didn't just speak. He performed a professional surgical strike, using words as instruments to challenge perception, expose contradictions, and force a confrontation between image and reality. By the end of this introduction, the stage is set. The audience is captivated. The tension is electric. Meghan Markle is in the spotlight like never before, her career potentially at a tipping point, and the world is watching every heartbeat, every subtle movement, every micro-expression. One question remains: how will she respond? Will she weather the storm? Or has Hollywood witnessed a moment that could redefine her legacy forever? What does it feel like to walk into a room where every eye, every camera, every whisper is calibrated to scrutinize your every move? Picture it: the 2025 Gotham Film Awards, an event where glamour collides with influence, where reputations are polished, or destroyed in a single night. For those who have attended before, the Gotham Awards carry a certain weight. Not quite the Oscars, not quite the Golden Globes, but enough to make Hollywood sit up, take notice, and whisper behind closed doors. For Meghan Markle, this night was supposed to be another stage to display her elegance, her poise, her carefully curated public persona. But it would turn into the kind of night that celebrities dread in their wildest nightmares. The air was electric, buzzing with anticipation. Red carpets stretched like scarlet rivers, lined with photographers, journalists, and fans desperate for a glimpse of their favorite stars. Every flash of a camera felt like a heartbeat, each one capturing moments that could define the evening or haunt it. The venue itself was magnificent, a temple of cinematic celebration adorned with glimmering chandeliers, gold accents, and velvet drapes that seemed almost alive under the lights. Inside, Hollywood royalty, award-winning directors, actors with careers spanning decades, producers with the power to make or break films, they all gathered in a single, tension-filled space. And yet, beneath the glamour, something was different this year. There was a quiet whisper running through the crowd, barely perceptible but impossible to ignore. Guillermo del Toro, the celebrated director whose vision had captivated millions worldwide, was set to deliver his speech. Known for his unflinching honesty, his insightful critiques, and his ability to expose the cracks behind a glittering facade, Guillermo was not someone who delivered meaningless platitudes. When he spoke, the industry listened, and everyone knew he was not here to flatter. Backstage, Meghan Markle prepared with her usual composure, but the tension was unmistakable. Every hair in place, every step measured, every smile rehearsed, yet the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Her team whispered reminders, adjusted accessories, and tried to maintain control over the narrative. They knew the stakes. They understood that this was more than just a night of glamour. This was a public test of her resilience, her image, and her place in Hollywood's hierarchy. The red carpet was a parade of stars. Kate Hudson floated by in a gown that shimmered like liquid gold, Michael B. Jordan exuded charm and confidence, and countless others moved with practiced elegance, aware that millions of eyes would dissect their every gesture. Yet among them, Meghan's presence was impossible to ignore. Every camera seemed to follow her, every flash accentuating her smile. But even the most polished appearance could not hide the subtle tension in her posture. It was as if the room itself was aware that something unprecedented was about to unfold. Inside, the award ceremony began with the usual fanfare, applause, laughter, and carefully timed speeches that celebrated the art of cinema. But Guillermo del Toro's arrival changed the energy in the room. Even seasoned attendees felt a shift. There was a weight to his presence, a sense that something extraordinary and potentially devastating was about to happen. Whispers circulated. Who would he target? Who might feel the full force of his words? And then, cameras caught the moment that sent a ripple through the audience. Guillermo's eyes locked on Meghan Markle. To understand the gravity of this moment, you need to understand Guillermo del Toro's influence in Hollywood. He is not merely a director. He is a force of nature, a storyteller whose vision shapes perception and whose critiques carry weight. When he chooses to speak, it is never casual. Every word, every pause, every glance is intentional. And tonight, his attention was fixed. Not on a rising star, not on a controversial project, but on Meghan Markle. The audience held its collective breath. Even those accustomed to high drama could sense the tension tightening like a drawn bowstring. The cameras zoomed in, recording every nuance, every flicker of expression. Meghan, poised and controlled on the surface, felt the pressure mounting behind her smile. The director's gaze was unwavering, analytical, and penetrating. It was as if Guillermo could see not just the public persona, but the vulnerabilities, ambitions, and contradictions hidden beneath the polished exterior. And then, the speech began. Guillermo's words were deliberate, measured, and piercing. At first, they seemed like general observations, insightful comments about Hollywood, storytelling, and artistry. But as the sentences unfolded, it became clear that the focus was narrowing, honing in on a single individual. The audience leaned in, cameras panned, and a ripple of tension spread like wildfire. Guillermo was not merely critiquing. He was dissecting, revealing layers of perception, ambition, and public image in ways that no one had anticipated. Backstage, Meghan's team exchanged subtle glances. They could see the impact on the audience. Gasps, raised eyebrows, subtle shifts in posture. All indicators that Guillermo's words were landing harder than anyone could have predicted. Social media had not yet caught the live feed, but whispers and murmurs circulated rapidly. This was not a minor critique. This was a calculated, surgical dismantling of public perception, and everyone in that room knew the stakes. What made Guillermo's approach so striking was his calm, almost serene delivery. There was no shouting, no exaggerated gestures, no attempt to humiliate. Yet each word carried the weight of authority, each sentence a deliberate incision into reputation and image. To those who understand Hollywood, this is far more effective than drama or theatrics. A subtle, confident critique from someone of Guillermo's stature can shift perceptions more drastically than any viral headline. And tonight, the impact was immediate. Meghan remained outwardly composed, but small tells betrayed the internal storm. A tightening of the jaw, a slight shift in posture, a fleeting flicker of uncertainty in the eyes. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet anyone trained in reading human behavior could see it. In Hollywood, where image often dictates opportunity, such moments are critical. One misinterpreted gesture, one slip of emotion, and the narrative can change entirely. Outside the auditorium, journalists began to sense the magnitude of what was unfolding. Phones were raised, microphones adjusted, and fingers poised over keyboards. Within minutes, the first whispers of Guillermo del Toro's pointed critique would hit social media. Hashtags would trend, clips would circulate, opinions would polarize. Fans and critics alike would dissect every nuance, every inflection, every micro-expression. And all of it would trace back to this single, pivotal moment at the 2025 Gotham Film Awards. There is a question that hangs over this night. How does one maintain control when the narrative is slipping through their fingers in real time? For Meghan Markle, the answer was not simple. Every second counted, every glance measured, every interaction scrutinized. The room itself seemed alive, charged with energy that could shift in an instant. Allies and rivals alike watched, some ready to defend, others ready to capitalize on any misstep. By the time Guillermo finished the first portion of his speech, the tension had reached a crescendo. Audience members shifted uneasily, some nodding in agreement, others exchanging glances that betrayed discomfort. Meghan's composure remained intact, but the cracks were visible to anyone who knew where to look. Cameras captured the subtle reactions, ensuring that no detail would escape public scrutiny. And yet, the night was far from over. The initial shock, the gasps, the murmurs, these were only the beginning. The real impact would unfold in the hours and days to come, as clips spread online, industry insiders weighed in, and the public began to form opinions based on a single, pivotal moment. One question now loomed larger than any other. What would happen next? Could Meghan navigate this storm unscathed, or had the trajectory of her Hollywood career shifted irreversibly? Backstage, the energy was electric. Whispers became more urgent, glances more calculating. Even those who were not directly involved in the unfolding drama sensed the tension and the potential fallout. The red carpet had already done its job, showcasing glamour and prestige, but now, the invisible currents of power, influence, and reputation were in motion. And in the center of it all stood Meghan Markle, poised yet vulnerable, navigating a world where a single word from a director like Guillermo del Toro could alter everything. Have you ever wondered what it's like to have a reputation so formidable that a single word from you can make an entire industry flinch? To walk into a room and have every conversation, every glance, every gesture subtly recalibrate because people know your opinions carry weight? That is Guillermo del Toro. Not just a director, not merely a visionary, but an architect of perception and influence in Hollywood. And when he speaks, the world listens. Not because he demands attention, but because he earns it consistently through decades of work, creativity, and an unflinching commitment to honesty. Guillermo del Toro's story begins long before the 2025 Gotham Film Awards. long before his gaze landed on Meghan Markle in that fateful moment. Born in Guadalajara, Mexico, he emerged from a world far removed from Hollywood glamour. But even in his early years, there was a distinct vision, a desire to explore the interplay between darkness and beauty, reality and fantasy. His films, celebrated for their emotional depth and visual ingenuity, did more than entertain. They provoked thought, challenged perceptions, and exposed truths that others often glossed over. In Hollywood, reputation is currency, and Guillermo's currency is unparalleled. He has a history of mentoring, guiding, and even confronting actors, producers, and writers with brutal honesty. Many have described working with him as a mixture of exhilaration and terror. Exhilarating because he pushes boundaries, forces excellence, and reveals hidden potential. Terrifying because he leaves no pretense unchallenged, no inflated ego untested. Over the years, he has cultivated an aura that is equal parts admiration and apprehension. To collaborate with him is a privilege. To oppose or disappoint him is a professional risk. By the time the 2025 Gotham Film Awards arrived, Guillermo del Toro had established a career spanning decades, with films that are considered masterpieces, awards that are coveted, and a network of influence that stretches across the globe. His voice is not simply one among many in Hollywood. It is a measuring stick, a benchmark of authenticity and excellence. People pay attention to his words because he sees beyond surface charm, beyond media narratives, beyond curated public personas. He has the rare ability to look at someone and, almost instinctively, discern their alignment with substance, integrity, and talent. And that brings us to the moment that changed everything at the Gotham Awards. Guillermo's focus on Meghan Markle was not incidental. This was deliberate. To understand the gravity of his attention, we must examine the history that led to it. Meghan, a figure of immense public attention, has always been polarizing in Hollywood. Her celebrity is a product of both fascination and scrutiny, a combination of talent, ambition, and high-profile relationships. Guillermo, known for his honesty, had long observed her trajectory, her choices, and the way she navigates the industry. Some insiders suggested he had reservations about her understanding of Hollywood's delicate ecosystem, her approach to collaboration, and her reliance on image over substance. On the night of the awards, Guillermo's arrival was quiet yet commanding. There was no fanfare, no overt display of dominance, but the effect was immediate. Attendees instinctively shifted. There is a difference between fame and authority, between being known and being respected, and Guillermo embodies the latter. His mere presence reframed the room's energy. Conversations paused, cameras adjusted, and subtle acknowledgments of his influence were visible everywhere. Those familiar with Hollywood politics understood. When Guillermo is present, reputations are on notice. What makes Guillermo's approach so formidable is the combination of intellect, emotional insight, and a nuanced understanding of human behavior. He does not rely on spectacle to convey judgment. Instead, he observes, evaluates, and delivers critique with precision. In public, this can appear calm, measured, even polite, but make no mistake, the impact is devastating when directed at someone unprepared for it. And Meghan Markle, despite her experience navigating media attention, was about to confront this reality firsthand. Let's consider the psychology behind his influence. Guillermo del Toro understands not just performance, but perception. He recognizes that Hollywood is not merely a creative industry. It is an ecosystem built on networks, trust, and credibility. Reputation is fragile. One poorly perceived action can reverberate across decades. When he speaks, he does so with an acute awareness of this dynamic. His words are strategically chosen, often layered with meaning, exposing gaps between persona and performance, ambition and authenticity. This is why the audience at the Gotham Awards felt the tension. Guillermo was not lecturing about film craft. He was delivering a nuanced evaluation of character, professionalism, and presence, and it was impossible to ignore. Over the years, Guillermo has had several moments in Hollywood where his critiques made waves. Stories circulate of actors reconsidering their career choices, of producers halting projects mid-development, of studios rethinking strategies, all due to his observations. There is a particular story about a major franchise where his critique of an actor's approach to a role led to a complete recasting. It wasn't about personal animosity. It was about alignment with vision, authenticity, and credibility. Guillermo's influence is that precise, that decisive. Now, apply that to the Gotham Film Award scenario. The red carpet, the flashing cameras, the public scrutiny, everything was amplified. Guillermo's attention to Meghan Markle meant more than a casual observation. It meant that every word he spoke would carry not just critique, but consequence. He had the platform, the authority, and the audience to make a subtle yet irreversible impact on her public perception. And in Hollywood, perception often trumps reality. The first moments of his speech set the tone perfectly. Without shouting, without theatrics, Guillermo began weaving a narrative that would captivate the audience, forcing them to reconcile admiration, expectation, and scrutiny. His delivery was calm, precise, and unerringly confident. Those watching could sense that every sentence was premeditated, every pause carefully calculated to maximize impact. To the untrained eye, it may have appeared as a routine speech. But to those who understand the stakes in Hollywood, it was clear. This was a defining moment, and the target was unmistakable. What makes Guillermo del Toro especially dangerous to public figures like Meghan is his ability to balance praise and critique. He never resorts to pure condemnation. Instead, he frames his words as insight, as observation, as a reflection of reality that the audience must confront. This approach is psychologically devastating because it invites agreement, creates tension, and forces reflection, all while maintaining a veneer of civility. The result is a critique that lands with maximum effect, often leaving the target exposed in ways they cannot immediately counteract. As he spoke, subtle reactions rippled through the room. Some audience members nodded knowingly, recognizing truths they had privately discussed. Others shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. And Meghan, despite her composed exterior, could not fully shield herself from the subtle but undeniable impact. In Hollywood, where every glance is recorded, every expression scrutinized, the smallest reaction can become a headline. Guillermo's words were already becoming a ripple, and the ripple would soon become a wave. By understanding Guillermo del Toro, we understand why this moment mattered. He is not just a director. He is a barometer of authenticity, a guardian of professional integrity, and an unflinching observer of human behavior. His attention to Meghan Markle was not trivial. It was a deliberate, measured act designed to expose, evaluate, and challenge. And in a room filled with Hollywood elites, where every career decision is a negotiation between perception and performance, the consequences could be profound. But even knowing his history, even understanding his influence, no one could predict exactly how the audience, the media, or Meghan herself would react. The Gotham Film Awards were underway, the cameras rolling, the flashbulbs capturing every moment, and one question hung in the air. Could anyone withstand the scrutiny of Guillermo del Toro without consequence? Have you ever wondered how someone who seems to have it all, charisma, fame, influence, can also carry a shadow that follows them relentlessly? Meghan Markle has lived that paradox her entire public life. To millions, she is a figure of elegance, charm, and glamour, someone who navigates red carpets, interviews, and public appearances with seeming ease. To others, she is a lightning rod for controversy, a polarizing figure whose every choice, statement, or social media post is dissected with precision and judgment. And on the night of the 2025 Gotham Film Awards, both sides of that paradox collided in a way few could have anticipated. The world had watched Meghan rise from television actress to global personality. Her role on Suits gave her initial recognition, but it was her marriage into royalty that elevated her to an almost mythic status, blending celebrity with the mystique of monarchy. The transition was far from smooth. Tabloids dissected her every move. Critics questioned her authenticity, and social media amplified both praise and condemnation to dizzying heights. For some, Meghan represented modernity, ambition, and resilience. For others, she became a symbol of entitlement, manipulation, and strategic self-promotion. Hollywood, however, is a different beast entirely. Fame alone does not guarantee respect or longevity. Within the industry, credibility, collaboration, and perception are everything. And while Meghan's global recognition made her an undeniable presence, it also placed her under a microscope that few could survive unscathed. Every interaction, every performance, every red carpet appearance was not just a display of style, it was a test of legitimacy. Could she navigate the subtle politics of Hollywood? Could she earn the respect of creatives, producers, and fellow actors beyond the public eye? In the weeks leading up to the Gotham Film Awards, speculation about Meghan's presence ran rampant. Insiders whispered about her relationships within Hollywood, noting past conflicts, rumored tension with co-stars, and occasional creative disagreements. While the public often only saw curated images and polished interviews, those in the industry knew a more nuanced story. Meghan's ambition was clear, her confidence apparent, but ambition in Hollywood is a double-edged sword. It can open doors, but it can also create tension, resentment, or suspicion, especially when paired with a public profile that is larger than life. On the red carpet that night, Meghan's preparation was meticulous. Every detail was planned. Her attire, hair, makeup, accessories, and even the tone of her smile. She moved with practiced grace, interacting with photographers and journalists with charm and ease. Yet beneath the composure, a subtle tension lingered. A quiet awareness that the Gotham Film Awards were not just about celebrating film, but about perception, influence, and judgment. She knew that the eyes of Hollywood insiders were evaluating her as much as the cameras capturing her image for the public. Contrast this with the rest of the attendees. Kate Hudson, radiant in gold, effortlessly commanded attention without seeming to try. Michael B. Jordan exuded magnetic charm, his every movement watched and mirrored by fans and photographers alike. And then there was Meghan, poised yet shadowed by anticipation, aware that one misstep, one subtle reaction, could be scrutinized endlessly. The juxtaposition was telling. While many in the room relied on confidence, fame, or long-standing industry credibility, Meghan's presence was a study in calculated poise under pressure. But the tension in the room was not just about optics. It was about relationships, history, and influence. Guillermo del Toro's focus on Meghan was no accident. The director, known for his ability to pierce public facades and discern authenticity, had long observed her trajectory. Some suggested he questioned whether Meghan fully understood Hollywood's nuanced social ecosystem, where collaboration, reputation, and credibility outweigh celebrity alone. Others believed he was issuing a public test, evaluating not just her poise, but her capacity to navigate criticism in a high-stakes environment. Hollywood insiders have long noted that Meghan's career path is unconventional. Unlike actors who rise steadily within the industry, she carries a dual identity, a celebrity recognized worldwide and a figure scrutinized through the lens of royalty. This duality creates both opportunity and challenge. On one hand, it grants her unparalleled visibility. On the other, it places her under intense scrutiny, where mistakes are amplified and successes are questioned. The Gotham Film Awards became a focal point for this tension, a moment where the intersection of fame, ambition, and criticism would collide. As Guillermo began his speech, the room's energy shifted palpably. Meghan, ever composed, felt the weight of every word even as she maintained her public poise. The director's critique was not overtly hostile, but it carried the precision and subtle authority that only someone of his stature can command. Audience members, from seasoned actors to industry newcomers, leaned in, sensing that they were witnessing more than a simple speech. They were witnessing a professional reckoning. The audience reaction was immediate and telling. Some nodded knowingly, silently acknowledging truths they had privately discussed. Others shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react without appearing disrespectful. And Meghan? Her exterior remained polished, but subtle cues betrayed the tension she was experiencing. A slight tightening of her jaw, a fleeting blink, a micro-adjustment in posture. In Hollywood, where perception is often reality, these micro-expressions carry extraordinary weight. They are instantly captured, analyzed, and transformed into narrative for both media and industry insiders. This is where the duality of Meghan Markle's public persona became most evident. To the world at large, she appeared composed, glamorous, and unshakable. But within the walls of the Gotham Film Awards, the dynamics were more complex. She was navigating a room filled with powerful influencers, individuals whose opinions could shape careers overnight. Each word from Guillermo del Toro, each subtle gesture from an audience member, each flash of a camera was a variable in an equation that could determine her professional future. It's worth noting that Hollywood is not forgiving to those perceived as out of sync with its culture. Collaboration, authenticity, and reputation are not just buzzwords. They are currency. Insiders often whisper about checking the room, about observing how someone navigates both praise and criticism. For Meghan, the challenge was magnified. She was not just performing in front of cameras. She was performing under the scrutiny of an audience whose judgment carries weight far beyond the evening itself. Yet Meghan is not untested in high-pressure situations. From her time on television sets to global appearances and media interviews, she has cultivated an ability to maintain composure under intense scrutiny. The question, however, is whether that composure would be enough against a critique as precise and pointed as Guillermo del Toro's. Unlike a journalist, a fan, or a casual observer, Guillermo operates within Hollywood's ecosystem, and his words carry both influence and consequences. The stakes were enormous, and the room felt it. Every moment of the speech heightened the tension. Guillermo's observations were sharp, insightful, and delivered with the calm authority of someone who knows his voice matters. Audience members, from actors to producers, were visibly engaged. They understood that this was not a casual critique. It was a deliberate evaluation, a public assessment of both presence and professional integrity. And Meghan? She maintained her poise, but the undercurrent of tension was palpable, a silent acknowledgement that a single misstep could have lasting consequences. There is a broader question here. How does someone balance public persona with private reality when every move is under scrutiny? Meghan Markle's life has always been lived in the intersection of public admiration and intense scrutiny. From royal protocols to Hollywood expectations, she navigates spaces where perception can outweigh reality, where a carefully crafted image can either elevate or endanger a career. The Gotham Film Awards became the stage for a confrontation between ambition, perception, and authority, an environment where one misstep could ripple across decades of influence. And then came the moment that would etch this night into Hollywood history. Guillermo del Toro, with calm precision, delivered the critique that would define the evening. It was not loud or theatrical. It was incisive, subtle, and devastating in its implications. Every sentence was measured, each pause strategically placed, each word carrying layers of meaning that only those familiar with the industry's nuances could fully comprehend. The audience held its breath. Meghan remained outwardly composed, but the tension was tangible, a storm behind her carefully maintained smile. The Gotham Film Awards were meant to celebrate achievement, talent, and collaboration. But on this night, they became a crucible, a test of authenticity, resilience, and the delicate balance between image and perception. For Meghan Markle, the evening was not just about attending an awards ceremony. It was about navigating a high-stakes judgment in real time, under the gaze of one of Hollywood's most respected and feared voices. Have you ever witnessed a room so tense that even breathing seemed amplified? That was the atmosphere at the 2025 Gotham Film Awards the instant Guillermo del Toro turned his full attention toward Meghan Markle. Up until that point, the night had been filled with familiar glamour, red carpets, applause, laughter, and the quiet hum of cameras clicking. But suddenly, all of it faded into a heavy silence, as if time itself had paused. The moment was electric, almost surreal, and it began with a single, measured glance. Guillermo's eyes locked on Meghan with the precision of a predator assessing its target. It was not a stare of anger, nor one of judgment in the petty sense, but one that pierced through layers of public persona, revealing both vulnerability and ambition, charm and calculation. The audience immediately felt the shift. Experienced Hollywood insiders recognized the signs instantly. Body language tightened, whispers ceased, and cameras tilted instinctively, capturing the charged energy of the moment. Even the most seasoned celebrities, accustomed to red carpets and speeches, subtly adjusted their posture, aware that they were witnessing something rare. The silence that fell was almost unnatural. Flashbulbs no longer popped in their usual rhythm. Laughter died midair. The collective attention of the audience, both in the room and beyond, concentrated on a single point. Meghan Markle, poised yet visibly calculating, facing one of Hollywood's most formidable voices. Guillermo's presence alone would have commanded attention, but what made it extraordinary was the deliberate way he began to speak. His voice was calm, measured, and unwavering, a voice that did not need theatrics because its authority was inherent. In the first few sentences, he spoke about Hollywood, artistry, and the responsibilities of public figures. At first glance, it seemed like a general reflection. But anyone paying attention, the producers, directors, and actors who understood the subtleties of language in the industry, recognized the narrowing focus. The words were crafted to resonate beyond the obvious, to plant seeds of doubt, reflection, and evaluation. Each phrase was a small scalpel, slicing gently yet firmly into the fabric of perception. Meghan's reaction was carefully controlled. A slight lift of her chin, a composed smile, hands positioned gracefully. Every move was practiced, every gesture calibrated. Yet, under the surface, the audience could perceive tension. The slight tightening of her jaw, a brief micro-frown, the blink pattern that changed for just a fraction of a second. All signs that even a seasoned public figure can feel the weight of scrutiny when it is exacted with precision. Hollywood veterans watching this exchange knew exactly what these subtle tells meant. A public reckoning was unfolding. But what made the moment truly unprecedented was the room's collective response. Usually, during award speeches, applause punctuates statements, laughter breaks tension, and murmurs fill gaps. Not here. Not now. The silence was a vacuum of attention, magnifying every word and gesture. Guillermo's critique was not yet a headline. It was a live, unfolding narrative, and the audience was acutely aware that history was being made in real time. Behind Meghan, her team whispered among themselves, attempting to maintain a semblance of control. PR strategies, social media management, and reputation policing suddenly seemed like distant tools compared to the immediate gravity of Guillermo's words. One wrong movement, one ill-timed response, and the narrative could tilt in a direction that would follow her for years. For Guillermo, the moment of silence was strategic. He did not rush. He allowed the tension to build naturally, letting the weight of attention focus entirely on the subject of his critique. Hollywood insiders understand that timing is as crucial as content. A pause, an intentional silence, or a slight shift in gaze can amplify the impact of every following word. In that charged atmosphere, every syllable that left his mouth landed with amplified resonance. Audience reactions were telling. Some nodded subtly, silently acknowledging the precision of Guillermo's observation. Others exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to respond with applause, laughter, or continued silence. Social media had yet to erupt, but backstage and among journalists in the room, speculation began to circulate immediately. Clips would circulate, headlines would form, and pundits would begin the careful task of dissecting every nuance of expression. The silence was not just a pause. It was a signal that the next few minutes would be defining. What added to the intensity was the contrast between Meghan's composed exterior and the scrutiny she was under. Hollywood is unforgiving when perception falters. Every micro-expression is magnified, every gesture interpreted, and every nuance becomes material for narrative building. Guillermo's method of critique leveraged this perfectly. He delivered insight, observation, and evaluation simultaneously, allowing the audience to interpret while maintaining the veneer of politeness and authority. It was psychologically devastating because it forced Meghan to navigate an intricate web of expectation, perception, and judgment without an obvious escape. Consider the psychological dimensions at play. Guillermo's gaze and words triggered what experts call social evaluation stress. In essence, humans under observation, particularly from an authority figure, often experience heightened self-awareness and cognitive load. This is amplified when combined with a live audience and cameras capturing every micro-movement. Meghan's composure was impressive, but even minor indicators, shifts in posture, blink rate changes, microfacial movements, revealed the internal processing of pressure. The The room collectively sensed it. Everyone watching knew that something extraordinary was unfolding, even if they did not yet understand its full consequences. By this point, the speech was no longer just a critique. It had become a spectacle of influence and power. Guillermo's mastery was evident. He controlled the narrative, directed attention, and established the stakes without raising his voice or resorting to theatrics. Meghan, in contrast, was under the spotlight, navigating the weight of scrutiny, poised yet vulnerable, aware that every movement could become part of the unfolding story. And then, the critical line came. The sentence that would reverberate across the room, across media channels, and eventually across the world. It was precise, calculated, and devastating in its subtlety. It was not an accusation in the dramatic sense, nor an insult. It was an incisive observation, a carefully crafted statement that exposed perceived inconsistencies, questioned judgment, and highlighted gaps between public persona and professional credibility. The room went even quieter. If the initial silence was palpable, this moment made it almost suffocating. Every eye was locked, every camera focused, every mind racing to interpret, process, and predict the impact. Backstage, Meghan's team reacted with urgent subtlety. Whispered strategies, quick exchanges of glances, and the instant calculation of potential social media fallout dominated their awareness. This was no ordinary moment. It was a tipping point, a professional test that could reshape her public and professional standing overnight. The reality of Hollywood influence, in all its ruthlessness, had arrived. But the audience, the media, and the millions watching would not fully comprehend the implications until the ripple effects hit social media, news outlets, and insider discussions in the days following. The silence, the attention, and the charged tension were only the beginning. The true consequence of that moment, the full scope of what Guillermo del Toro had unleashed, was yet to be realized. And that's when it became undeniable. The room was not just silent. It was suspended in anticipation, holding its collective breath for the next move, the next response, the next ripple. In Hollywood, moments like this are rare. Moments where authority, perception, and vulnerability converge in real time. Moments that redefine careers and shift narratives. And Meghan Markle was standing at the epicenter of one such moment. Have you ever heard words so precise, so cutting, yet delivered so calmly, that they feel like they echo long after they are spoken? That is exactly what happened when Guillermo del Toro delivered his critique of Meghan Markle at the 2025 Gotham Film Awards. In a room packed with Hollywood's elite, cameras rolling, and millions of viewers ready to dissect every nuance, the director's words landed like a hammer, subtle, measured, but impossible to ignore. And make no mistake, the impact would ripple far beyond the night itself. The moment Guillermo spoke was cinematic in every sense. Not because of theatrics, but because of the power of authenticity combined with authority. He did not need to raise his voice or gesture dramatically. His calm demeanor, deliberate pacing, and unwavering gaze created a tension that gripped every attendee. It was a masterclass in influence. Words chosen with precision, pauses calibrated to let each idea sink, and an unspoken weight that suggested, without saying outright, that the critique would define reputations. The substance of his critique was multifaceted. He began with observations about the nature of Hollywood itself, its obsession with image, the delicate balance between talent and perception, and the necessity of credibility in every professional interaction. Then, almost seamlessly, he shifted focus. Meghan Markle, a figure of immense public fascination, was no longer just a celebrity under discussion. She became the embodiment of a tension that Hollywood constantly grapples with. The collision of fame, influence, and authenticity. Guillermo's words were surgical. He did not attack personally, but he questioned choices, highlighted inconsistencies, and dissected public persona with a precision that left the room spellbound. It was a critique that operated on multiple levels: professional, personal, and symbolic. Audience members felt the weight of it in real time, some nodding subtly, others exchanging uneasy glances, while the cameras captured Meghan's carefully maintained composure, betraying just enough to suggest vulnerability beneath the surface. What made this critique so shocking was not the words themselves, but the delivery and context. Guillermo has long been known for his honesty, but rarely has his assessment been so public, so pointed, and so unmistakably directed at a single individual. In Hollywood, reputation is fragile. One misinterpreted gesture, one perceived misstep, can influence opportunities for years. The subtle authority of his critique ensured that every observer, both in the room and later online, would perceive it as significant. This was not casual commentary. It was a moment of reckoning. Meghan's response was the next layer of drama. Outwardly, she remained composed, her smile poised, her posture elegant. Yet subtle cues betrayed her inner processing. A slight tightening of her jaw, a blink that lasted a fraction longer than usual, a micro-adjustment in her seating. These tiny signals, invisible to casual observers but magnified in camera close-ups, revealed the tension of navigating critique under pressure. Every Hollywood insider watching knew the stakes. They understood that the impact of this speech would extend far beyond the room. Social media, of course, would be relentless. Clips of Guillermo's statements spread almost immediately, each word dissected by fans, critics, and commentators. The reaction was polarized. Some praised the director's honesty, lauding his commitment to authenticity and his refusal to indulge superficiality. Others expressed shock, questioning the severity of the critique or debating whether such public assessment was fair. In Hollywood, opinion is power, and perception often becomes reality. Guillermo's words, initially intended for an in-person audience, quickly became a global conversation. The ripple effect extended to industry insiders as well. Producers, directors, and casting agents watched carefully, interpreting not only the critique itself, but Meghan's response to it. In Hollywood, reactions matter as much as the critique. How a public figure handles pressure, scrutiny, and evaluation can define their professional viability. Meghan had navigated public scrutiny before, but this was different. The combination of Guillermo's authority, the live audience, and the immediate digital amplification created a pressure cooker situation. One wrong move could reshape perception overnight. Meanwhile, the audience in the Gotham Film Awards venue remained silent but intensely focused. Every subtle movement, every pause, every carefully measured inflection in Guillermo's speech was noted. The silence was not awkward. It was anticipatory. Every individual in that room understood they were witnessing more than a critique. They were witnessing a professional evaluation with the power to redefine public and industry perception. Hollywood insiders, trained to read nuance and intention, recognized the layers of strategy and precision behind each word. Guillermo's critique also highlighted an underlying truth about Hollywood. Talent alone is not enough. Perception, collaboration, credibility, and authenticity are equally critical. Meghan Markle, despite her global fame and influence, was being measured against these invisible metrics in real time. Guillermo's observations, delivered with a calm yet unwavering authority, forced the audience, and Meghan herself, to confront this reality. It was an elegant, devastating demonstration of how power operates in the industry, subtle, strategic, and irreversible in its consequences. Adding to the drama was the contrast between Guillermo's calm authority and Meghan's carefully maintained composure. She was a study in poise under pressure, but even the most sophisticated performance cannot completely mask tension in moments of high stakes. Every subtle movement was amplified by the cameras, analyzed by professionals, and debated online. The dichotomy of public confidence and private processing created a tension that electrified the room, leaving attendees and eventually the audience watching globally on edge. The speech also contained elements that made it uniquely memorable, references to narrative integrity, professional accountability, and the responsibilities of visibility. Guillermo spoke not just about personal behavior, but about systemic dynamics within Hollywood, highlighting how public perception and professional credibility are intertwined. For Meghan, these were not abstract concepts. They were an immediate, real-time evaluation of her standing, both as a public figure and a professional. By the time Guillermo concluded the main portion of his critique, the room remained silent, an almost unnatural hush that magnified the impact of every word. Then, with a subtle nod, he signaled the end of his speech, leaving the audience to absorb the magnitude of what had just occurred. Reactions began to ripple through the room. Whispers, exchanges of knowing glances, subtle gestures acknowledging the precision and weight of his assessment. For Meghan, the challenge of maintaining composure in a live, high-stakes environment was not over. It had only intensified. Outside the venue, social media exploded. Clips of Guillermo's critique circulated within minutes, sparking debates and commentary across platforms. Headlines formed quickly, each iteration amplifying the significance of the moment. Analysts and pundits dissected his statements, interpreting both the words and the subtext. The ripple effect was immediate. Public discourse, professional analysis, and industry speculation converged to create a narrative that would follow Meghan Markle for weeks, months, and potentially years. And yet, the true magnitude of Guillermo's critique would not be fully understood until the hours and days following the Gotham Awards. The combination of immediate audience perception, social media amplification, and insider interpretation created a storm that few could have anticipated. What seemed like a single, calm critique in the moment was actually a catalyst, one that would define both Meghan's public image and professional trajectory moving forward. As the room slowly returned to normalcy, the tension lingered. Hollywood insiders exchanged glances, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Reporters whispered about the implications. Meghan's team worked quietly to recalibrate strategy, understanding that the fallout would extend far beyond the evening. And for those paying close attention, one realization became unavoidable. This critique was not just commentary. It was a turning point, a defining moment that had the potential to reshape careers, reputations, and industry narratives. But even as the night progressed, the ripple effects of Guillermo del Toro's words were only beginning to emerge. The cameras continued to roll, the audience continued to watch, and the narrative continued to evolve in real time. One question remained suspended in the air, a tension that no one could resolve immediately. How would Meghan Markle navigate the fallout? And what would the industry decide about her professional future in the wake of such a powerful critique? Have you ever been in a room where every pair of eyes is not just looking, but calculating, measuring, interpreting? That was the atmosphere at the 2025 Gotham Film Awards the moment Guillermo del Toro's critique landed on Meghan Markle. Hollywood is an ecosystem of perception and influence, and in that room, everyone understood the stakes. Every reaction, every glance, every subtle shift of posture was being cataloged. Not just by Meghan herself, but by every insider, actor, producer, and journalist present. The room's silence was punctuated by subtle movements, micro-expressions, and unspoken calculations. Some audience members nodded almost imperceptibly, recognizing truths they had already observed in whispered backstage conversations. Others furrowed their brows or exchanged quick glances, a silent acknowledgement that this was a moment few would forget. For the seasoned Hollywood professionals in attendance, it wasn't about shock or scandal. It was about strategy, influence, and the unspoken rules that govern reputation. They understood this was history in the making. Backstage, the reactions were just as intense, albeit more frantic. Meghan's team, acutely aware of the impact, leaned in, trying to anticipate every next step. Subtle hand gestures, whispered suggestions, and rapid exchanges of strategy filled the space behind the curtains. Social media teams were already calculating potential headlines. Public relations professionals considered talking points for immediate damage control. In real time, the intricate machinery of celebrity management kicked into overdrive, because in Hollywood, perception is everything, and one miscalculated moment can define a career. Across the main floor, the audience reaction was layered and complex. High-profile actors like Kate Hudson, seated nearby, maintained a polite exterior, but even she couldn't hide her subtle recognition of the tension. Michael B. Jordan, charismatic as ever, allowed his body language to convey awareness without overt judgment. There was respect, certainly, for Guillermo's authority, but also an understanding of the stakes for Meghan. Every flashbulb captured more than images. It captured an intricate web of emotional responses and power dynamics. One of the most telling reactions came from producers and casting directors who had been quietly observing. In Hollywood, These individuals wield tremendous behind-the-scenes influence. They recognize moments like this as turning points. A single perceived weakness, a subtle mishandling of public pressure, can recalibrate their evaluation of an actor's reliability, professionalism, and long-term viability. Guillermo's critique wasn't just words. It was an industry-wide test, one whose impact could be felt in casting decisions, project considerations, and even endorsement opportunities. Some in the room felt immediate sympathy for Meghan. After all, she had managed global scrutiny before and was still navigating Hollywood's treacherous waters. But sympathy in Hollywood is fleeting. Respect and credibility are what endure. Guillermo's critique challenged both her image and her perceived authenticity, leaving many attendees silently questioning whether Meghan could maintain the delicate balance between public persona and industry credibility. The photographers and media personnel, while trained to remain objective, were not immune to the tension. They captured every nuance, every fleeting expression, understanding that these images would dominate social media, tabloids, and news coverage in the following hours. A simple micro-expression, slight tightening of the lips, a subtle blink, or a faint hesitation, could become a headline. And in the age of instant digital amplification, every second mattered. Meanwhile, the whispers among the audience were telling. Words like precision, poise, strategy, and reputation circulated quietly, forming a collective acknowledgement that they had just witnessed a rare spectacle. A live, high-stakes professional evaluation from one of Hollywood's most respected voices. Guillermo had not raised his voice, gestured dramatically, or sought sensationalism. The power of his critique lay in subtlety, authority, and the undeniable weight of his reputation. And the reactions in the room reflected that reality. Even celebrity observers, those used to dealing with intense media scrutiny and public attention, seemed momentarily disarmed. They sensed the unusual gravity of the situation. Some adjusted their posture, crossed their legs more deliberately, or subtly shifted their gaze to process the dynamics unfolding in front of them. The room had transformed from a space of celebration into a living